Hi everyone, Mr. H here. This is chapter 3.3 Break-Even Analysis. Due to the extension of this presentation, it will be divided into two parts. So this is part 1. In this part of the presentation, we will explain the concept of contribution and we will also learn how to draw a proper break-even chart. So let's get started. Let's begin with contribution. When you sell a product or provide a service at a certain price, it is important to tell how much of that price, how much of those sales you are keeping in comparison to how much money you're spending to make that product possible. This is what contribution is. Contribution is the amount of money earned after subtracting the variable costs from the sales, from the revenue. Okay, so you get your sales, you subtract how much money you spent to make those products possible, the variable costs, the ones that change according to the number of products, and then you get the contribution. This value is important for the break-even analysis. It is used to calculate how many products need to be sold to cover the costs. And now, one way to find the contribution is by finding the contribution per unit. So imagine you're selling cookies and you're selling them at a certain price. So you would like to tell how much of those cookies, how much of the price of the cookie you are actually getting as contribution. So it's very simple. You actually just subtract the variable cost per unit, how much you spend to make that cookie, from the price per unit. So if you are selling each cookie $1, and the cost for each cookie was 50 cents, then the contribution would be naturally 50 cents. Okay, and that would be the contribution per each cookie. So that's what you get per unit. But you can also get the total contribution. Okay, you can also calculate all that. It's very simple. You just look at the bigger picture. You get the total contribution by subtracting the total variable cost, how much you spent for the tray of cookies, the total variable cost, from the total revenue, how much you got from selling that full tray. Okay, and then you will get the total contribution. Another possible way to find the total contribution is also a very simple calculation. You just multiply the contribution per unit by the number of units sold. So you sold 20 cookies, you just multiply it by those 50 cents we were talking about in the beginning, then you're getting the total contribution of those sales. Okay, so these are two possible views: contribution per unit and total contribution. Okay, and these are the ways we can find out those numbers. Now, remember that contribution is not profit. So profit is not contribution. Profit is another different value. We have just subtracted the variable cost. We have actually ignored the fixed cost. So contribution is ignoring the fixed costs. It's just considering the variable costs being subtracted from the price or from the total revenue. However, we can use the contribution to find out the profit. How? Well, we get the profit by subtracting the total fixed costs from the total contribution. So this is another way to find out or to get the profit. Okay? I hope this is clear. Now, let's move forward. The break-even point is a concept that comes from all this concept about costs and sales and products. I mean, when you start a business, when you start production, you would like to know how many of your products you have to sell, how many cookies you have to sell to make sure that you are paying for or recovering all the initial expenses. Okay, all the money you spend to make those cookies possible. Okay, so the break-even point is exactly that number. Is the number of products sold. Is the number of if the level of output sold. Okay, is how many products you have to sell, where the total revenue equals the total cost. Basically, you are answering the question, how many products do I have to sell to pay for all my costs. We need that number to make sure that we are not losing money when we are selling. In order to understand and visually understand the break-even point, we prepare a chart called the break-even chart. Okay, this chart has two axes. The horizontal axis is the one with the output, the one with the sales. So you will see this horizontal line is about the number of products. Okay, the output, the products you are making, or the sales, the products you are selling. Okay, so this is the number of products. The vertical axis is about the costs and the revenue. So the vertical axis is about the money. So remember, vertical, the money, horizontal, the number of products. Okay, number of products, money you spend to make the products, or money you are getting from selling the products. Right. Now we begin building this chart with the costs, and we start with the costs separately. We first think about the fixed costs, the ones that never change. Because they never change, it doesn't matter if we make 0 products or 100 products. It doesn't really matter. The fixed cost will remain the same. So it will always be a horizontal line parallel to the output axis. Okay, so it's the same. It's just the same all the time. It doesn't change. On the other hand, the variable cost will have to start from 0 and will grow depending on the number of products that we are making. So the more we make, the higher the line. It will be one like this. This is a line to show the variable costs. Okay, fixed costs, variable costs, we have the two together now. With these two lines, we can now calculate the total cost. The total cost is basically the addition of these two values. So if we draw that line here, it will obviously go alongside the variable cost. They will be two parallel lines, but it will begin from the fixed cost. Why? Because even when you don't make any product at all, and you don't spend any money on making it, you are still paying the fixed cost. So it will have to begin here and grow alongside with the variable cost, like this. So here's the total cost. This is your most important line now to find the break-even point. So you had the fixed cost first, the variable cost then, and then you get the total cost here. Okay? Now, let's talk about the sales. Let's talk about the revenue. We just talked about the cost, how much money you spend to make the products possible. Now let's talk about the sales. You're selling your products at a certain price, obviously higher than the cost, in order to recover and get some profit. Recover the cost and get some profit. So if you're selling nothing, it will be 0. But as you start selling more and more and more, the revenue line will grow higher, and it will look like this. This is the total revenue, the total sales. So look at this part. The part where these two lines intersect, this is exactly your break-even point. This is the part where your sales finally meet the costs, and you are paying for all the costs of making the products possible. Okay, so this is where the revenue equals the cost, and this is the answer we're looking for. This is the break-even quantity, represented with this Q. Okay, this Q represents that quantity. This is the break-even quantity. Okay, and this is your break-even chart. This is a way to understand and to visually understand, especially visually understand, how costs and revenue relate, and to find exactly in a chart to show in a chart where your break-even quantity is. This is a specific number you need to know to make sure you're selling the right number to recover your costs. Now, this area on top is called the profit area. It is called like this because remember, this is your beginning. This is the least number of products you have to sell to recover your cost, but there is no profit unless you start selling more starting from this point. So all this area, as you keep selling more and getting more revenue, is your profit area. On the other hand, you have the loss area. If you sell less than the break-even quantity, if you sell less than the break-even point, then you are actually losing because your cost line is higher than your revenue line. So you are actually losing money if you're not selling more than the break-even quantity. Okay, this is why this is like a very nice chart to understand how important it is for us to sell the right number of products and to start getting profit. Thinking of this, when a business produces a number has a specific level of output, produces a specific number of products, the business would like to tell how safe it is from the loss area, how far it is from the loss area. So that is called the safety margin. The safety margin is basically finding out how safe you are from the loss area, how far away you are from the loss area. So let's say you are here. This is your output, your level of output, Q1. So this space between the break-even quantity, Q, and the actual level, Q1, the current level, is called your safety margin. And obviously, the bigger the safety margin, the safer it is for you or for your business. So we get the safety margin by subtracting the break-even output, Q, from the current output. And again, the bigger that difference, the better for you. You are safer and safer. So this is the break-even chart. An important tip for IB students. Most of the IB questions that are focused on the break-even chart and break-even point, you will be required. These questions will ask you to draw a proper break-even chart, a fully labeled break-even chart, and it must look exactly like this. So please remember all those lines and remember how this process started from the variable and fixed costs, going to the total cost, then the total revenue, and then the intersection known as the break-even point with the break-even quantity here, and where you know that the revenue and the cost will be equal in this area. So having this developed, in the following video, we will learn how to calculate and get the exact number of the break-even quantity and a few other details and a few other concepts that must be considered or that are important when we analyze the break-even chart. So this is it for now, and I'll see you in the second part.